Okay, we are live. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are back for our third LinkedIn live lesson series. As you can see, we're joined here with Ben Reed, the Redeployable CEO and founder. I'm Ellis Greenway, our head of business development and partnerships. So today we're going to be giving some actionable advice, some hard-learned lessons, and looking at Ben's story, really going through his journey from being in the REME, working in different businesses in sales, and then jumping into a career where he's now running his own business. So Ben, if you just want to give us a quick intro to yourself, nice and quickly, and then we'll jump into what we're going to do for the rest of the session.
Of course, big man. It's good to be here. I'm an ex-sergeant in the REME. I served 12 years. I got out of the army in 2017. I moved into tech and then eventually went on to start my own business. I'm the founder and CEO of Redeployable.
Perfect. Yeah, lovely to have you on, mate. Obviously, Valentine's Day, so couldn't pick anyone else to be here with me right now for this. I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation. But before we go ahead, just a few little gatekeeping messages. So, as ever, this is a fantastic opportunity for everyone to take some value out of the discussion that we have, but also for yourselves to do some networking. So, in the comments, for everyone who is checking in with us right now, let us know who you are, a bit about your background and what you're looking for. The chance that you'll stumble across someone who can help you out is probably pretty high. So stay engaged with us. And we've also got Annabelle, as ever, our behind the scenes marketing guru, working on everything. So if you want to give her a quick shout out, then Annabelle is always there. But nevertheless, let's get stuck into it. We've got around half an hour now. As usual, we're going to be going through some questions with Ben, talking a little bit about our experiences, and then there's going to be the opportunity for our live Q&A as well. So have some questions ready. We'll be doing that with Slido, where you can do that anonymously too. So Ben, let's jump straight into this. Slightly touched on this, but can you go into a bit more detail about what your background was and exactly how you pivoted into working into the civilian world?
Yeah, of course. Good question. So I was an aircraft engineer in the REME, so Army Aviation. We were attached. We used to wear I've got it behind me, the powder puff berries, not Army Air Corps, though, attached to Army Air Corps REME cap badge. I was very lucky coming towards the end of my time that I had a brother who was in the artillery. I've also happened to have a sister who was in the Royal Engineers, but my brother was in the artillery and he was in tech sales. And coupled with that, I had a friend who was a sixth form PE teacher who had moved on from being a sixth form PE teacher to moving into sales. So I had eyes on this career path that nobody was telling me about. Everyone was encouraging me to go and be an aircraft engineer when I got out. So I wanted to go and do something different. It didn't feel like being an aircraft engineer was, for me, like the thing that I wanted to do long term. So I followed my closest network, my brother and my friend, and managed to windle an interview for a company to see what this tech sales was all about. So that was in 2017, and it is by far the best decision that I ever made, taking the leap and moving career or moving role, function, whatever you want to call it, to try something new.
Yeah. And it's quite a big takeaway point, really, isn't it? When we look at what are these proven routes from the military into the working world, and there's some really common ones. And then there's a lot of misconceptions about different roles, like that sales used to be seen as this bit of a dirty word, and then understanding actually the reality of it and what that world is really like. So kind of sticking on that theme, what was it that really surprised you when you entered this whole new career path and working world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's getting more into my career. I did reasonably well. I did reasonably well in tech sales. I went to a company called Recall. I was there for 18 months, just over 18 months. Then I moved into software, which was always, like my brother had always said, get into software sales. Money, at the time, money was a real driving factor for me. I wanted to get a bit more financial freedom for my family. We were a growing family, so I got into software sales, and I always worked my ass off because ultimately in sales, and you're 100% right. Sales is not how you imagine it before you get into sales. It's really consultative. It's about understanding the customer. There's a lot more to it than just pushing a product on someone. Your typical sales that you've kind of maybe seen in films or people knocking on your door. But for me, I moved through my career, and I always felt a sense of loyalty to companies, regardless of me moving to different companies. I was always trying to promote and progress in what was quite an unusual. It wasn't this linear career path, right, where you start as a private, you move to Lance Corporal, then corporal, then sergeant. It's really like trying to find your way. But ultimately, I felt a sense of loyalty to the companies that I was working for, and that actually bit me in the ass on a couple of occasions. Just because I tried to be as professional as I possibly could be, you know, in an organisation. But ultimately, like you've got to look at it in the reality of it is organizations are commercial entities. They have shareholders, sorry. They have, you know, a board or a C-suite that are going to do things in the best interest of the business and the shareholders. So no matter how well you're doing in a business, no matter what targets you're hitting, no matter if you're excelling and hitting your targets and smashing your targets, you you are expendable. You're not a superstar. And I think that starting to think about myself, I gradually started to think about myself over time, because I realized that actually my level of commitment to a company and loyalty to a company isn't reciprocated. It's not, which is a hard truth for me, because it's not like that in
Yeah.
the military, is it? You're very much you know, the company, your team, your whatever it is in the military, where it's a massive switch when you transition out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's, making that switch from the bigger picture, the mission, the team goal, that's everything, isn't it? There is no individual ways of working to get to individual goals. It is all about the team, and completely agree. I find that quite a big culture shock to learn to deal with at the start, and learning to almost start to put yourself first rather than the team first, the mission first, the organization, the military, your new business, taking that step back to be like, actually, I'm the priority here, which is mega interesting because we look at the statistics around the tenure of veterans and the countless ones that I spoke to doing this kind of role, where I speak to people who've been there years and years and years at a business, have a great opportunity, and they're like, I feel bad to go and hand my notice in. But I think that's all part of the values they get instilled to going through the military. So yeah, completely agree.
Ella, I don't think you. And I'm sorry. Can you hear the background noise or not? I've got a
I think
dog.
I heard a little bit. That's nice.
Yeah. I've got a dog jumping up at a door now, trying to get into my office. I think. Well, I'm not telling people to lose that sense of
Yeah.
loyalty. I'm just
Mm.
telling them to be more aware that the working world outside of the military just doesn't necessarily operate in the same way as your values. And
Yeah.
I think it's having that awareness and understanding that, and putting yourself first sometimes is I think a really important lesson for people, you know.
I,
Don't lose it, because
yeah.
it's a solid trait, you know. It's just be aware.
I think that that's the best way to summarize that is the awareness. It's, having those values to you, what make you such a valuable person as part of a team, as part of a business, because it ties into all the other aspects of determination, resilience that we hear all the time. Because if you're bought into the bigger picture, you're willing to do, go the extra mile and do the extra work and put in that effort, really. But you're absolutely right. I think it's the idea of just being aware to how it is a little bit different, and using that to your advantage to not be, I guess, seen off. Um, so yeah, a huge surprise there. But was there anything, and this is actually quite a hard question, but was there anything that you were prepared for that didn't surprise you? Anything that you knew you were kind of walking into and it did come to be true?
Yeah. Like I've always had the mentality of like hard
Mhm.
work, commitment, bias for action. Like I felt like, regardless of whether you're in the military or whether you're in civilian life, if
Mhm.
you lead on work ethic and you
Yeah,
put the hard yards and you commit to the things you say you're going to do and you do the things you commit to, um,
yeah,
I think that wasn't a surprise to me. That sort of mentality was kind of sought after out
yeah,
there, and actually, it's
100%.
really surprising how much it's sought after, that type of mentality, because there are a lot of people in civilian life that don't operate on every, you know, all those angles. They're people who are comfortable after 20 years in a business, or people who aren't willing to put the hard work in. You know, it's, for me, that wasn't surprising, but it's something that I think you gain in the military, that really does kind of make you stand out when you get out of the forces. So
Yeah, 100%. I think there's like just an element around a willingness to work and an undeniable factor that just volume of work speaks loudly. If you just continuously turn up, work hard, there's a lot that can do, but that isn't actually as common of a skill set that we do always see, which is all, it's just an interesting thing. And another, what I found is a bit of a surprise stepping into a completely new demographic. Like there's sometimes a misconception, I think, that the military world isn't very diverse, but you've got people from all walks of life, every single background, who are now on level playing field, which you don't get anywhere else. So to go from having that being in the same place and all starting on that same start line to coming into the working world where everyone's starting out at different points, everyone's got different motivations, different reasons for being there, what they're looking for. It's just a whole new way of working, right? But wherever you are at, just that willingness to work is a really good way to get forward in the game.
Yeah, and let's be like super real in the conversation as well. There are people in our
Mm.
community who are not willing to work hard and who aren't
Yeah,
committed and who
yeah.
aren't biased for action, right? Like that's
Mm.
we're like any other community.
Mhm.
However, uh, the people who get far and do well in the military generally the ones who are committed, unless they stay for a
Yeah,
hell of a lot longer. I think it's like anything. If you it, it's the committing to things and not following through with things. Like I find that quite a bit in not in our world now, but in previous roles. Trying to get something out of someone that's not
yeah,
on their priority in their priority list. Trying to get someone to go outside of a usual process, and we'll get onto this, I guess, when we speak about big and small companies. But trying to get people to move outside of their guardrails is not people don't. A lot of people don't go above and beyond to try and get shit done fundamentally.
yeah. And what actionable advice do you have for anyone who is wanting to take that, I guess, take those steps to make sure that they are putting in the right work in the right?
Yeah, what a great question. For me, you've got to be prepared to be vulnerable, or that's it, and that's easy to say when you're in a space where you're not able to be vulnerable. So there are a couple of dynamics there, but ultimately, be open to what you don't know, because it doesn't matter if you're an RSM, major, colonel, lance jack, whatever you are, just set a ton of army ranks, all the other ranks in the other services. The reality is you're not going to know a lot of stuff when you get out. You're not going to know. There's going to be stuff you aren't going to know. So you need that place to just put your hand up and say, I don't. First and foremost, I don't know these things, because you need to learn them relatively quickly, especially if you've landed in a reasonable position when you get out of the military. So I think first and foremost is being able to find out the things you don't know quickly and doubling down on that. And then for me, I found, and I can only speak to the commercial sales side, is time management, priorities, routine, which is easy for us, right? Routine, drilling things over and over again. For me, that time management routine, becoming more and more productive, moving more to be an analytical mindset, so starting to look at where you can create efficiency, and with whether in my world with deals, or the amount of users I was adding into a deal, or whatever it was. I found just going into like that
Yeah,
a granular view of everything and trying to look for efficiencies is the way that I became more and more productive. But ultimately, you need to know first and foremost what your priorities are, right? Like what is most important.
yeah,
So
yeah. Helpful. I think that time management's key. So key. Look, the moment you understand that there is no such thing as procrastination and you have priorities, then you implement some time management. You can really start to get a proper structured day, and something that we try and practice on the daily. But Ben, you touched on it almost just a minute ago. Now you've worked at small businesses, large businesses. You're now running your own business. In our community, there's this element of what you don't know when you don't know it. And looking into the outside world, it's almost like bigger is sometimes better. It's a huge name that everyone knows. I want to be at that company, but we know that that's not necessarily the case. So, can you just speak a little bit about how you found working at different sized businesses as opposed to running your own, and a bit about the pros and cons of each of them?
yeah, of course. Yeah. So I haven't worked at a 80,000 person business, 100,000 person global business. I've worked at a larger business, so a 1,500 person business, global. So, and quite a relatively slowish moving business. So steady Eddie, uh, increase in revenue year over year, but ultimately not a mammoth, versus working in startups. So I then moved down to the startup world. Now, first and foremost, I think it's personal preference where you land and what you wanna do. In big business, it feels more secure. You feel more secure, slow moving. It's not necessarily more secure. You see a lot of the layoffs that are happening now across the tech industry. Not necessarily the more secure. However, it feels more secure. I think it's for people coming out of the military. You're in a big organization, so to move into a big organization, especially a brand name.
Yeah.
I've gone to, I've called some out, but the big names that we see in our space, that Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan's, AWS. They're big businesses and great businesses to go and work for. But ultimately, they've all got different ways of working. They're also they're a massive beast. You're a kind of number, a part of a big thing. Whereas you move down to the startup world and you've got to have more of a risk appetite. The rewards are maybe if it's successful, statistically, you're more likely to be unsuccessful than you are successful in the startup world. That's the reality. So you've got to have more of a risk appetite. The value you get from there is you are cross-functional, massively cross-functional. If you want to learn about business as a whole, it's a great place to learn about business. I feel like it's a bit more like a mess. Like the camaraderie, the teamwork, you're all in it together, the purpose is there, but ultimately it is more risky. The reality. There are good and bad. There are pros and cons for both, in my opinion. And you've really got to. For me, it took me to get into big business, but then I worked my way down to the startup world. And what I found, like, super important for every single stage, was half the battle is having a good boss, having a good manager. Like, literally, it doesn't matter if you're in a 60,000 person company or a 30-person startup. I won't swear, but if your boss is a douchebag, then it's going to be tough on the offset. So, like, I think you got this mindset when you're interviewing that I want this job. You've applied for it because you want the job. It's something that's cool, something's appealing to you. So you've always got this kind of commitment in your mind that this is a job I want. I need to get this job. That might mean when you're going through the interview process and you meet your hiring manager and there are red flags, you might like kind of brush that under the carpet and say, it's gonna be fine. Maybe, I really want to work at this company. But I'd urge you just to take a step back and consider it. There are plenty more opportunities out there. Just remember that it's not the only one for you. But getting your direct line manager right is for me probably the most important thing, regardless of the size of the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I'm sure he wouldn't mind him shouting out, but the first person who really mentored me as my step into the civilian world, Jason, was unbelievable. He took the time to understand my background, showed like someone who wasn't from the military but took the time to understand it, was my warm and fuzzy in the interview stage that this guy at least understands me, my background, and what genuinely has my kind of future as part of one of his interests as well. That being such a green flag for me was so like kind of evident and telling, and a massive part of what I believe my success to be going forward. And the same with my last place of work, had a fantastic line manager, and so I haven't really had the experience of being in the civilian working world with a terrible manager, and I don't know what I'd do if I had one. I would really struggle with that. So I think that's some kind of really strong advice, just to definitely make sure you figure that one out.
And you're not going to say that I'm a terrible manager on this call. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to say that.
Absolutely not. No.
It's exactly the same for me. There's a guy called Angus Ingram who I would say gave me a chance, and I don't believe in giving. I don't think people are giving veterans a chance. I think you're employing people who are good veterans. You're employing people who are going to change the dynamic of your team. They'll be high performers if you give them the right environment and the right opportunities. Angus Ingram, who was my first manager out of the military, took a chance on me into a relatively senior position coming out as an account manager, and he just allowed me to feel like I could fail as long as I was learning. He let me go and just commit to things, put me in uncomfortable places, but protected me from the noise above him. That was super important. So we never got any of I imagine he was getting a lot of flack when we were hitting numbers, or blah, blah, blah. But ultimately that manager coached me, allowed me to just go out there and commit and fail, which I did on a number of occasions to get better. He gave you that space to then, as long as you don't keep failing the same thing, that was his mantra. Like, you just learn, get better at it, don't make the same mistake twice. That's super important.
That's quite interesting, actually, in how that relates to the military kind of management. The idea of, keep it in troop and deal with things kind of in your teams first before like looking at hierarchy and bringing that in. So that's something that I'd not actually thought about just yet. But so as we're looking now to kind of get into our last kind of element of this live lesson, Annabelle, if you would bring up our Slido, please, that'd be fantastic. So as mentioned earlier, the Slido now is for any of you guys watching here. If you've got any questions, then scan that Slido, scan that QR code, or bang the comment into the LinkedIn comments. If you've got any questions for us as we dive into kind of our last closeouts with Ben, and we'll get into these after. So, Ben, a really interesting one that I'd like to ask you, and almost like a bit of quite a quick one. But given everything that you know now, what would you go back and tell younger Ben?
Um, well, it's interesting because where I am now was that
Mm.
there's not my goal when I first got out.
Hmm.
So, so I needed to experience what I experienced for 6 years,
Yeah.
5 years to land where I
Hmm.
am in this position. So I probably wouldn't give Ben any advice, and the reason I wouldn't give Ben any advice because I'm quite I'm quite an impatient person. I want to do things quickly. I want to achieve things. I want to keep moving. I'm quite high energy. And if I was to try and give Ben some advice now, it'd probably try and speed me up to get to this ultimate goal, which wasn't my goal. Do you know what I mean? I just think, what I'd give advice to other people getting out is you only know your level of risk appetite. It's
Yeah.
your own personal, kind of preference, right? Some people don't have a high risk appetite. Some people do. I think I've got a relatively high risk appetite. And I think uh, yeah, I think like entrepreneurship now. But if you think about everything, like is just believing in. It sounds so cliche and cheesy, but like self belief, like not
Yeah.
having that imposter syndrome has absolutely crippled me on a number of occasions. And it's just, I think, determine your level of risk appetite. Your personal circumstances absolutely determine as well your level of risk appetite, and that self belief. I think going into different roles is key. So that's
Yeah.
probably the advice I'd give to Ben,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's a really interesting one. We've just had a question jump in. So, do you think your military experience? I don't know if you can hear those sirens. Sorry about that. Do you think your military experience gave you the confidence to take the risk on your own company?
Um, I think when you get into the professional world, your military experience is forgotten after you've started to achieve
Mm.
in the professional world, right? Like I was an account manager, account executive, senior account executive, head of sales. And, and I was earning more money, but ultimately and doing well. But ultimately, like once you become an account manager and account executive, no one really gives that much of a in my opinion. They
Mm.
don't really look back. They're like, okay, you're in AE. What number did you hit? Who did you sell to? Blah blah blah. In the world that I was in. So
Yeah.
but I am absolutely a massive believer that that first 12 years of my life completely shaped me as a human being. So there are a
Yeah.
lot of my traits now that help me in civilian life. I think are just my values, the people I like to hang around with, the level of integrity. Everyone who knows me knows I won't. I'm not into seeing people off to get ahead. It's just not the game I'm in. So I think, yeah, the answer is I think the military experience did help, but could I have started my own business when I first got out? No, I wouldn't have been
Yeah.
able to do that personally. Now I'm not saying people can't. I needed that run up, that experience, commercial experience to get better, not only to get the experience, but also to save money to start my own business because, surprise, surprise, it's not you need some cash to be able to go and do your own thing. So I hope that
It,
answered your question.
No, I think I agree, mate. I think there's that point around relevance, like the recency relevance of what your last role was. When it's in the military, that's your like competitive advantage. That's your step forward to set yourself apart. But once you're in that working world, it's, what are you doing in this working world? That's what's going to carry you forward, not your military past. But it is those values that you take forward that, like you say, and I completely agree with, definitely shape me as who I am, like as an adult anyway, to in everyday life and work just being one part of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really, really helpful. Ben, did you consider any other careers paths other than sales when you were leaving?
No, I was completely money driven at the point of
Yeah.
leaving. I was like, I used to drive through a little village called Hartley Whitney. I was in an RAF base in Odium, and it's a really nice little village. And I said to my wife, I'm going to go and earn more money, and we're going to move to this village, which down south. So surprise, surprise, it's not cheap. So I was very. My brother had told me how much you could earn if you put the work in and you were good at it. My friend had told me, so that I didn't even. I went onto a CTP 3-day CV workshop, and didn't do any courses, did nothing. I just solely focused on this job, sales. That's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
That's not considered. It's not considered. And please don't take that as there is not money out there in other roles, because there absolutely is. We're experiencing that now. But just for me at that time, because
Yeah.
of the people I knew who were doing it, that was nailed on for me. Is that's what I was going to do.
Yeah. I mean, very similar to me. I didn't have those, hard skill set and engineering background to go and be a senior professional in anything else. It was my soft skills and what I thought would carry me in the sales world to where I could start getting to that point of time freedom, financial freedom, the benefits of being a civilian, like outside of the military, that you actually want to kind of live and start to experience. So I completely agree. So let's fly through a couple of these. So we've got a couple of minutes, but we've got some more questions here that I'd like to. Hopefully, we'll answer as many as we can for everyone. So, are there any mechanisms that you find particularly effective for dealing with imposter syndrome or self-doubt?
Yeah, good shout. So before every customer call I ever went into, or prospect call I ever went into prior to starting my own thing,
Mhm.
um, I was told by a founder of a business that I worked for. I was working for a big software. Long story short, I was working for a big software company. We used to acquire businesses. The company used to acquire businesses. The company acquired it for 25 million, a business, UK based software business. I then went and worked with a founding team and started to work with that team. One of the founder there, a guy called Jonathan Bellwood, an absolute legend of a guy, um, used to tell me to write all of my achievements on the front 2 pages of my notebook. Not just professional achievements, just the things that made me happy, like of what I've done, my family, deals that you'd done, roles that you'd had, things that you'd done in the military, and just read these front 2 pages before every single call I was going into, and he said that it's like it recenters you to what you've achieved in your life. So when you get in there and you think you don't deserve to be there, or you don't have the qualifications to be there, well, actually that's bullshit. It's bollocks. You've absolutely got it, and you've got a good life, and all you need to do is just go and deliver on what you can go and deliver on in this call. That, I mean, I don't know if that's helpful to anyone at all.
Yeah.
I've still got things like that from where I kind of try and document the things that I've achieved. But
That's good. I mean, you summarize that, and it's positive affirmations, right? Which is something that's mega common in this world for kind of just giving yourself that little nudge when you are starting to get those little seeds of self doubt. And but they're good. I think it's good that you've got them, and sometimes and they're a little bit of pressure on yourself because you want to perform. If you didn't have any hesitations, any nervousness, then it might be that either your goal isn't big enough or you might not care enough. So they're not necessarily bad things. We've got a few more questions here. We're probably not going to have time to get through them, but for anyone who has asked these, what we'll do is we'll make sure that over the next few posts coming out on LinkedIn for our team and the Redeployable page, we'll get into these and we'll ask them. So Annabelle, behind the scenes, if you could take a note of all these, everyone who has asked these, if you want to follow us at Redeployable and follow the members of the team, we'll get answers out on some posts about all these. So to round up, Ben, a few bits of advice. So nice and quickly, short and sweet. What are your top 3 bits of advice to anyone watching this or watching this in the future?
yeah, so advice number one, I'd say start thinking about yourself a bit more,
Mhm.
um, and just realize, don't be naive to think that you know that it's not commercial and it's not a business. It is a business and it is commercial. And sometimes you just need to put number one first, and that's yourself. But don't lose those values that you have, and that sense of loyalty. Number two, hard work, commitment, and bias for action are absolutely sought after in Civvy Street. Absolutely. For me, the number one, you got to put the work in. You're going to get nowhere. And then three, I'd say finding a good manager, the right manager, and there's a difference there as well, right? I've had a manager who used to make me feel uncomfortable and put me under pressure. And it was great. He was a great manager. I wouldn't say it was not a softy, lovely, lovely relationship. It was a make me feel uncomfortable all the time. That was a good manager for me at that point in my life. So it's just, I think, finding the right manager for your stage of your career is super important. It's half the battle.
Nice. Really helpful, good actionable advice there. Pardon me. So that's pretty much rounding us up for our time today in our third live lesson of our LinkedIn live lesson series. So Ben, massive shout out. Thanks for coming on and joining us on this one. As I've said, those questions that we haven't answered, we will get answers out around all them. And you might have heard Ben's 3 bits of advice there. What we'll do is we'll put out some content around how you can actually make those bits happen too. So how you can go around like kind of assessing and finding the right manager, etc. Once again, so if you're not signed up to Redeployable on our platform, please do go and check out the Redeployable platform. Follow us on LinkedIn and on our socials, and hit up us, any of the team, if anyone feels like they do want to chat, needs a bit of advice and is steer in the right direction. We've always got time for that. So Ben, like I said, massive thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be seeing you later on anyway, but if you want to just say goodbyes and close this one out, then that'd be great.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, El. Thanks for running this, and Annabelle, and for the people that have joined. We absolutely appreciate it. If you're not following Redeployable, we're not a faceless organisation. You might have come across our team. Reach out to the team. Join the platform. Check out what we do. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. We are absolutely not a faceless team, are we? Ben is a linfluencer in his own right. I think he's even got a ring light right now.
Mate, a linfluencer just rode out 30 minutes of a Visla, jumping at a door with keys on it all the way through.
Cool. Well, that's us. We'll join you in the next one. Thank you again for everyone for tuning in and engaging with us today. We'll see you all soon. Bye.